I just started streaming because I have to remember.
Should have a light on.
Yeah, something to let you know.
Yeah.
Camera action. Get a phone of that too.
We need a tally light on the
We could have a
camera.
number of that.
You just, you're committed, Steve, you too, right?
We're just waiting for the mayor.
Uh-huh, okay. So I got a text from Josh saying this is
Right.
gonna be at the work session.
Yep.
Hello.
It's 4:30. Okay, at this time I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee of Thursday, June 28th, 2018. If I could have a roll call, please.
Counselor Dowell?
Here.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Mayor Reed?
Here.
Counselor Armstrong?
Here?
Counselor Ensel?
Here.
This time I'd like to open up the meeting to public comments. Members of the audience who may wish to comment on tonight's agenda, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll move on to part 2. Reports from department representatives and discussion with counselors. Number 1 item, the building inspector's tree report of 2018.
Yes, sir.
How are things looking with, that was requested by, did you ask to request to have this put on the agenda? No.
No, it's put on there because this is the next committee after you issue. It has to be on an agenda.
Okay.
And like the public safety wasn't from that. He issued it back in.
Yeah, for
Okay.
clarification, I didn't ask that
Okay.
go on this agenda,
All right.
but we're required to submit it to the council by the end of May.
Okay.
So I guess this is the next meeting.
All right, and we have seen it, and
Yeah.
do you have any comments, how it's from years past, how it's looking?
No, I mean, we've had some really hard ones that we've dealt with, so a lot of those are behind us. You know, we're still gonna have some every year.
How much time do you think your office spends on this? A season, we'll call it a season? If you were to add up all the
I'm
hours?
trying to put it into hours. It's a tough time. Having to do it in May when college is leaving that's, I'll come up with something for you. I don't have it off the top of my
All
head.
right. Hours. And who actually goes out to do the report? Is it
All of us,
all? Mhm.
yep.
Okay. And do people ask for you to re-inspect their hedge at
Oh,
times? More than once?
Yes, in fact, by the time they get the letter, they're gonna call us and say, hey, I've just done it. I shouldn't get the letter in the first place, and can you come and verify?
Okay, all right. And that is basically a courtesy that's extended, the re-inspection?
I missed.
Is that a courtesy on your part to re-inspect it? I mean,
Well, the law doesn't say that we have to.
right, so, okay. All right. Okay. Any questions on the tree report of 2018? Moving on, report from the Parking Violations Bureau for May 2018. And that we have on file. Seems the number 1 violation is, what would you say is that, Chief, the number 1 parking violation?
My guess would be parked on sidewalk, parking from driveway, handicap violations, things of this nature, not the time violations.
Okay, all right, all right. And those tickets are issued by members of the...
Complaint room by our patrol officers, so a citizen observes a parking violation, informs our department, the officers are dispatched as time permits, and if the violation is still present when they respond, they issue parking ticket.
Okay, and is it only complaint driven, or is it by observation?
That is the case, but I would say that's far less utilized, just it is way more practical, that somebody else calls and we respond versus if an officer is en route to a complaint, an incident, they might observe it, might not be present when they travel through and they do have time. When they're out on patrol, they do take proactive action, but that's not very common.
Okay, because I noticed it's quite a list here, it's very specific. One of the items on here is obstructing a sidewalk. Would that be parking over a sidewalk, or by putting merchandise on it, or?
No, I mean, so in the cases where a driveway to a residence goes, there's a sidewalk that intersects it.
Mhm.
If they are parked on a driveway, but it is also blocking the sidewalk,
Right.
that would be the section.
Okay, so that gets me to, we have the building inspector out checking for hedges for clear and free sidewalks. We also have you out doing snow inspections, correct? For clear and free sidewalks?
Yeah, actually, the police department helped with that this winter,
Okay.
checking the sidewalks.
And those are relatively new to us in some respects. Whereas the parking obstructing sidewalks has been on the books for a long time, is that correct?
Yes.
And that's probably more frequent than anything else citywide. I mean,
I would say
that's,
based on complaints that we receive, yes.
well, based on non-complaints. What would the venture this be, the guess of people consistently parking over the city-owned sidewalks?
I would say probably the most proactive one, observation-wise, would be not parked in a space or blocking something,
Okay.
or maybe the handicap space.
Because at last week's meeting, we had, the issue of parking or cars on the Beale Avenue Park where the community garden is. And some people drive in for the garden, some people drive in for the ball games to make it easier to transfer equipment. And we talked about equal application of the law in walkable communities, but we have many cars that consistently park on the city sidewalks every night, 365 days a year, which are the most frequent offenders, as opposed to maybe 2 or 3 snowstorms, a hedge hanging over. And yet there's no use of the sidewalk under those situations. Or a hedge, you might be able to remain on the sidewalk, maybe not as comfortably. A sidewalk with snow, you might be able to navigate it. But when a car is completely over a sidewalk and you have to walk in the street, child has to ride their bike in the street, I'm just wondering, is that also complaint driven?
What exact part of that?
That the car is parked over and it forces you basically non-use of city sidewalks and that you have to walk in the streets.
I would say predominantly, yes, because those aren't long-term parking violations. It's somebody that's going to a person's house for a half an hour or 20 minutes, or someone delivering something and they're there short-term, that in the time that it takes for the person to call,
Right.
observe the violation, and us to respond, there's.
But
not-
there's other situations where people are doing this at their homes. So they're there overnight, throughout the day, parking over the sidewalks.
So I'm not aware specifically, but I would imagine that those conditions exist.
How much is the ticket for that?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I would say $125 is a rough estimate.
I guess along those lines, where does that revenue go into where? Any revenue collected for tickets, or
The general fund.
it goes into the general fund?
The highest frequency is parking ban. On the last page of this report, there's 305 of those. That's a lot.
And those are only 4 months out of the year.
So that means there's a lot of them per month.
Oh, when there are parking bans for snow removal, it is not uncommon to tow and ticket 50 to 80 cars.
That's my next question, how many of these cars end up being towed?
All of them.
But that's not complaint driven, is it? Somebody
No.
is, okay.
So that's based on the Department of Public Works declaring a snow emergency, the mayor's office declaring a snow emergency. And then when it becomes time that that's in effect, we ticket and then tow, and that's in cooperation with Public Works.
Okay, so in equal application of the law, should we wait till people complain about cars parked over driveways? We heard anybody that, last week, that it's equal application of the law. So,
I don't think that's been a thrust for the police responsibility, given they don't have a parking officer. As you know, we're in the process of hiring a parking enforcement assistant. And once we can hire those individuals, I think we could more regularly enforce that. But I believe the police, triage. You got a certain number of hours in the day, and you're not going to divert resources from one thing very critical to public safety to another. I think that's one of the attractive reasons why we'd like to go and hire, and you've instructed me to try and hire a parking enforcement assistant that has a greater scope of work that they could do than they've done in the past. And we are on the final throes of negotiating with civil service on that. So maybe that question might be better answered next time you all meet. We should have a better protocol for that. The last issue, by the way, with that, we still have to decide whether that would be an individual reporting to either the building inspector's office or the police department.
and it seems to be going where? Is there a certain direction it's going into?
We framed it as reporting to the code enforcement building inspector's office, but there has been a little bit of subsequent discussion on where that would best fit. And I don't have any strong preferences. Whatever seems to work best is fine with me. And I think it was going more back towards police last discussion we had.
With civil service?
Civil service isn't concerned so long as they have that person report only to one supervisor. They want to know which of the two that they'll report to.
All right, so this is negotiations with the departments.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, picking up on last week's conversation, we'll move on to item number 3, department overtime expenses. I guess we're just going to focus on the 3 departments that are in front of us today, or? All right.
Yeah, well, Richard's been working on analysis for all the other departments too, so as your infrastructure division meetings come up and your finance committee meetings come up, those department heads will be prepared to talk about these things in more detail too. And for these individuals, we're given some documents by Richard, which will be able to answer some of your questions today.
I can go first.
It's okay, go ahead.
Why don't you ask me?
How did we get where we are today?
As far as
Overtime expenses.
we do the work that is required, and when that goes outside of normal work hours, that's when overtime is incurred.
Okay. And what type of work brought forth the added expense? Is it, what are we talking? Was it one particular incident, variety of incidents?
I would say that there are a number of things that cause it to exceed the budgeted amount. Predominantly investigations that start and end outside of normal work hours. The uncommon ones, like the easy example is narcotics enforcement. It is one thing to identify a time that might be excellent for enforcement, but we can't predict when we're going to buy drugs. We're largely dependent on some other persons. So that is one thing that it's a necessary component to the investigation, and we aren't largely in control of when that happens. So that does incur overtime. They are also lengthy investigations. We do have, from time to time, specific major incidents, like a fire, let's say. For an example, the fire just some time ago in Adirondack Lane. That incurred significant overtime expenses because of the way the structure, it wasn't safe to enter, but there was indications that there was more going on there than, face value. So to do a thorough and proper investigation, you have to keep people all around the clock, essentially, maintaining scene security. It's very exhaustive.
Because the insurance companies, do they work with the police department on reports and things?
They don't work with us,
Or-
but there is some cooperation level with the insurance companies. But if we're maintaining the scene as part of an active investigation, you know, that is still the fire department and our department's scene, and we determine who goes in and out of there.
Okay.
Chief
And-
is, oh, I'm sorry, no.
No.
I was gonna, if any of the overtime expenses that are incurred, any of that reimbursable?
So I did a rough analysis, the Chamberlain did a better analysis, but a rough analysis of the amount that is reimbursable
Mhm.
and is in varying stages of being reimbursed. Some has been, some is in the process, and some is just waiting to be reimbursed. I would say probably to the tune of maybe $40,000. So it would have us over budget, but only slightly. It would still be over at this point.
What do you mean reimbursable?
So we get reimbursed for certain drug cases funded by the federal government as part of the DA task force. And it falls under these acronyms that I won't subject you to, but they are funding sources for drug investigations. We also get reimbursed for certain traffic details that are in the governor's traffic safety initiatives. There's certain DWI enforcements that are reimbursable. The half marathon, all the overtime is reimbursed by the promoter, and things like that.
And how many categories of overtime? As I recall, there's multiple categories of overtime.
So I mean, that was, our timekeeping system is very, very good at identifying those things. I would say there's probably upwards of 20 different categories, probably more.
Okay, so
No.
it is very defined. Okay.
Yes.
We're talking about overtime without expressly stating it, but is like it's become a problem, or is overtime, is the department taking up more overtime now than it was at the same point last year?
So that's part of the analysis that the Chamberlain did. And this year, we do have more overtime usage than at this point last year.
How about over multiple years? I mean, you know, I'm just trying to see if, and thank you for raising the point I was gonna raise, Patrick, but over time, because I know there have been some positions that we've lost to attrition, so I just trying to figure out the equation of how it all works together.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
So as our department takes on different sizes, how that impacts the overtime numbers isn't really, I'm not qualified to answer that. I can tell you our personnel numbers do fluctuate. Our overtime over a series of years does fluctuate as well. Sometimes, I would say, more often than not, like over the last 5 years, we've been at or over more than we've been under. But we have been under in some years. And it really is dependent on a lot of different factors.
Are there staffing issues tied to overtime right now?
I wouldn't say issues,
Connections?
that'd be a speculation.
Okay.
But it is safe to say, though, that, you know, you've had similar levels of overtime in the past few years, but you've also had FTEs upwards of 53 people in the last few years too, and now you're down to what, FTEs of closer to 46. So there is that trade-off, is sometimes both chiefs will recognize that as their staffing levels go down, their overtime goes up, but sometimes it's still a responsible thing to do, because you're not paying additional benefits and health care, et cetera, on the overtime as you would on additional staffer.
Plus with the summer months, you're probably going to be even further short-staffed with vacations, et cetera, so your overtime, your seasonal overtime will probably be higher with events and so on.
So probably the bigger impacts are the special events over the summertime. I don't know necessarily on the vacations, it certainly does, it does cause our overall workforce to be reduced the summertime months, because more people take vacation typically. But I don't know if that's a true strain. I can tell you though, the analysis shows that the overtime kind of bells in the summer. That's fair to say.
There's more events and stuff.
Right.
So it seems that overtime is mostly driven by outside factors and not understaffing.
Again, that would be speculation on my part.
Mandated reporters, do they call the city police department or do they call another agency?
So if it is identified as occurring in the city of Plattsburgh,
Right.
we'll get the law enforcement referral.
Okay, and then a detective is assigned to the
So that is,
investigation?
so I mean, this is a good example too, is that just my time in the detective division, I will tell you that those law enforcement referrals, which is a child abuse
Right.
or a sexual assault involving a child, an allegation, and a mandated reporter has to make that notification. We have to take immediate action on
Right.
investigation. That usually occurs in the afternoon.
Afternoon when school is, yes.
Yes, so those are some examples of things that
Right.
will fall out, that can't be predicted.
Right, right. It is in the timing. I understand that. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Chief Lawless? Okay. Again, I'll just pose the same question. How do we get where we are?
Well, it's my overtime due to staffing.
Okay.
We're trying to maintain response levels.
Staffing, is there, at what rank? Is it equally divided? Is it
No,
throughout?
well, any entitled due to civil service, I have to, any supervisor that's off in scheduled time, I cannot have somebody move up as it's an out of title, so I have to bring overtime in for that. That's significant. And our minimum staffing level is 6, so that, if I drop below 6, I have to pull in overtime in order to maintain the services.
Okay. And the frequency of that is?
Pretty significant right now.
Okay.
And the
Especially all
drop below 6 would be attributed to sick,
Sick.
vacation.
People out on injuries, administrative issues, things like that, that would drop the numbers on the platoons.
So you have to have 6 people working at all times, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And how many full-time, we have about what, 30, 31?
We're at 32.
When you say 6 working, I just don't understand logistics.
Staffing vehicles.
6 per vehicle, because.
No, I have 3 vehicles and I have 6 people. So what I do is the ambulance is cross-staffed with 2 firefighters, depending on what call comes in first, is where they're gonna be. If a fire call comes in and they're in station, they'll jump on a fire truck. If the ambulance is out, then I'm down to 4 people, so I have a fire truck with a driver and an officer.
And that's when you call in overtime? Would
No,
it be?
no.
So 6 staffing means if
6
one truck
throughout the
goes this
day,
way, one
4.
truck goes this way, and the ambulance goes that way, it's all done by 6 people?
Yes,
But do you call anybody in?
only if the emergency if the emergency warrants calling off-duty personnel for an emergency. We can page them in.
And when is that determined? Upon arrival at the scene?
Arrival on the scene and investigation. So the officers make that determination as to what they encounter.
And time-wise, when you call them in, what's the response? I mean,
Till I start getting men back on scene.
right on the scene, because it must be.
Depends on, normally I can have a contingency there in 10 minutes. Everybody wears pagers. So, and we also have a phone app that'll go off. If there's a problem with structure fire, things like that, then we'll recall. But you can get calls for structure fires that don't turn out to be a structure fire. And upon investigation, you find it's not, they don't call in for that. Now, the examples Johnson had, they showed up and the back of the building's on fire. The officer determines the extent of the fire, how deeply seated it is, and what type of manpower is gonna be.
Okay, so given those numbers, calling in overtime, I would think would be a common practice, correct? Common?
No, it's only
No?
incident, that's incident driven.
Okay, well,
My overtime that you're seeing for the 6 men is my daily staffing to be able to have trucks and people on them to respond to any emergencies that come in.
And that's 24 hours a day?
24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
And so have 6 people on staff, 24 hours a day, there's 32 people is not enough to keep that amount?
It drives the overtime more. And that's where you're seeing the increase in overtime. And Richard's analysis is showing that we're different by, right now, about $6,000 between what the payroll and what the overtime was.
Chief, in those situations where you have two personnel on an ambulance, and then you would have 2 on a truck and another 2 on a truck, just say you get a call for
Right.
initial response, that means that there's no one in either firehouse.
Right.
What, do you immediately call in for coverage, or are they left vacant for?
They're left vacant. If it's an automatic alarm and you're going to investigate the alarm, you go and you see if you do your investigation, find if there's an actual problem with the building. And then at that time, you have more, if you need more people, which you have on staff, what's available.
Has there been any change in that protocol? When did you develop that protocol of the 6-person staffing level?
6-person staffing level happened with Mayor Casper's side. Previous to that, it was 7.
is any of that reimbursable from the ambulance, EMT?
Oh, the ambulance.
Is there overtime occurred?
User fees, is what our ambulance revenue was.
Mhm. But that wouldn't apply toward the overtime, or, it's just
No, it's-
normal fee
Right.
structure.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Any other questions? Mr. McMahon, any overtime expenses coming your way?
My overtime is running high.
Okay.
The actual numbers are pretty similar to what they have been in the past, but I have reduced my overtime budget last year, and actually the year before too, try and, in an effort to save some money. And rolled the dice that I could stay under that. I'm still under it, but percentage-wise, I'm running fairly high. We had just had some incidents this year, flooding in the park. I had a retirement a month ago, so we've been without a secretary for 4 weeks. And then one of my inspectors came down with a detached retina, so for the last 2.5 weeks, we've been operating with 3 people. So I've had to work my other 2 inspectors through lunch to cover things done.
All right. Any other questions for the building inspector? Let's see, we have to move along here. I think we pretty much touched upon overall budget expenses to date and anticipated budget monies for the remaining year, because so much of it is tied to the overtime. Is there anything that's jumping out? Expenses, ambulances, squad cars, anything? No? Okay. All right. And number 5, it seems we did touch upon that. So we'll move along to item number 3. Agenda items brought forward for departments to be approved by committee and recommendation to council. Did you want to read those, or do we want to read them aloud? Everybody?
Request to see Police Chief Patrick Rascal, who's the Business Director for Lake County and the Western.
I'd like to move to waive the reading.
I'll second.
And forward the motion, right?
Forward the motion.
1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yes, through 4, including 4.
I just have one question about 4. Chief Lawless, the 4 weeks supervisor training program, there'll be 3 employees that will be away for 4 weeks.
Yes.
So that's going to drive overtime as also, correct?
It will, but it's something that's mandatory.
No, I'm just,
Not
yeah.
already. We were lucky enough to be able to get them in at the same time. So that's going to cut down on our travel expenses and sending them to rehabilitation. But that's a mandated by general law.
And this is because it's promotional?
It's promotional.
First.
Any frontline fire officer has to attend that school in New York City, New York State law.
And $1,000, that seems to be pretty cheap for 4 weeks away.
Right, that's a general estimate for fuel and meals and things like that. It's paid for by New York State.
Okay.
So we'll get some reimbursement on our travel expenses.
Mhm.
Is this a pretty inclusive training? We do people coming from all over the U.S. for this time?
Just New York State.
Oh,
It's all
really?
New York
Okay.
State paid
Okay.
departments. Any career fire officer has to attend that. So you
Okay.
attend a class with FDNY officers.
Or, it's an education in itself. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Move the motion.
All in
Second.
favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we do a roll call on this? No,
You're
okay.
just moving it to the agenda.
All right,
You'll get a roll call today.
okay. Any old business to discuss?
Yeah,
Yes, please.
the gun buyback program.
Yes, well, okay.
If you were living under a rock, the gun buyback program took place this week and it was very, very successful.
Yes, I
So,
heard it was.
very, very positive.
Is it pretty much what you expected? Because you didn't know what to expect, Drew, or?
Our expectations were far lower.
Oh, good. No, good. Better
So
to
by
exceed you.
far exceeded our
All right.
expectations.
How many guns were bought back?
151.
Yep.
Wow.
And those were all pistols, or?
No, it was, about half. A third rifle, a third pistol, and those percentages aren't right. About 60 rifles, 60 handguns, and the rest were either non-working or assault weapons.
And what do you do with those guns? You destroy them?
Once we can ensure that they are not associated with crimes,
Mhm.
yes, they'll be destroyed.
Any standout items? No, okay. Just wondering. Something like made you jump back. Okay.
Was there a person who brought in the most, and how many did he or she bring in?
So my official answer to this,
Marshall
no
Dillon.
questions asked.
Okay, all right.
I would say that there are people that brought in multiple firearms.
More than one.
And they were that wasn't just
One widow brought in 100.
limited to city residents, that was countywide. or-
So that's something that, because we didn't ask questions, that's part of the Attorney
Good,
General's
good.
guidance. We didn't ask, so we don't know. But,
Right.
I mean, an assumption would be that there were people from far-reaching areas.
Mhm. Good.
When will you do this again, Chief?
Based on the Attorney General's advice, probably next year. I mean, they were very, very pleased. What they said was, in the past 20 or so that they've done, this was the third largest in New York State.
Wow.
So we're talking about Rochester, Buffalo, White Plains, Albany. For this to be the third largest one in the state speaks a lot about this community.
As well as those communities. But that's a
Sure, I mean,
different
but I
subject.
mean,
Okay.
It would seem that this community values public
Right,
safety.
yes.
I mean, that's really what this came down to.
That's my point. Okay.
Do you think it has any impact on crime?
That's our hope.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course. It's nice to hear you say that. Good.
Okay, thank you. Number 5, any new business? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. How do we do?
Mr. McFarland?
I vote 3.
Yeah, so a rather auspicious day that we'll be having our municipal lighting department meeting before our scheduled council meeting today instead of afterwards. So with that being said, I will call to order the committee meeting of the regular meeting of the board of the Plattsburgh Municipal Lighting Department. As for attendance, Director Armstrong,
Here.
Director Kelly,
Here.
Director Dowdle,
Here.
Director Ensel,
Here.
Director McFarland is here. Director Kretzer.
Here.
Director Reed. Present. Manager Tracy here. CFO Kluge is also here. So first, we have minutes of the previous meetings. Resolved that the minutes of the regular meetings of the PMLD Board held on May 3rd, 2018, and be approved and placed on file among the public records of the MLD office.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Ansel, seconded by Counselor Kretzer. Any discussion? Roll call. Director Armstrong.
Yes.
Director Kelly.
Yes.
Director Dowdle.
Yes.
Director Ansel.
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer.
Yes.
And Director Reed.
Yes.
That action was adopted. Number 2 is the financial report presented by MLD CFO Kluge. Reports and committee reports, and I believe she issued a report on financial standing.
Yes, the packet I just gave you is supplemental for year-to-date May. Here in the front, with the graphs.
Ah, perfect.
That's our historical revenues and expenses from May 2018 back to May 2013. As you can see, 2018 has been a very good year for us financially. In the detail behind, I've got a revenue report for year-to-date of $12 million. Expenses of $9.6 million. We've had capital spending of $93,000. And the difference of $2.3 million has been used to fund our debt service, retirement service, high-density and load service reserve, and $1,250,000 has gone into the capital reserve.
Oh, thank you, CFO Kluge.
And the final page is just a summary for your information of the New York State Rex and Zex surcharges that have been passed through customers' utility bills so far year to date, and $12,156. We're doing well.
Bill, is there any, I'm sorry, is there any limitation on that, or is that open-ended as far as those fees per se?
Well, the governor's not reelected, or 2030, whichever happens first. Now, we will, the elected Rex and Zex, there's OREX coming this fall. The governor's decided he also needs funds to do offshore wind farms. So he will be adding that to people's bills sometime this fall.
Do we know
No
what,
idea how much we're talking about.
you don't know the percentage?
No. We were just told it's coming.
And we are doing our best to keep any discretionary spending to a minimum. He's doing a great job and has been for several years now.
Thank you.
All right, so resolved that the financial report as read is hereby ordered, received, and placed on file among the public records of the MLD office. Moved by Director Kretzer, seconded by Director Kelly. Roll call. Director Armstrong.
Yes.
Director Kelly.
Yes.
Director Dowdle.
Yes.
Director Ansel.
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer.
Yes.
And Director Reed.
Yes.
And that action is adopted. Other items. Number 3A is resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore the MLD Board approves MLD to pay a deposit of $40,000 by check payable to Lewis and Greer PC as attorneys for the purchase of land identified in last week's Common Council meeting. Moved by Councilor Kelly, seconded by Councilor Ansel. Any discussion on that point? No discussion being heard. Move to roll call. Councilor Armstrong, or
Yeah.
sorry, Director Armstrong.
Yes.
Director Kelly.
Yes.
Director Dowdle.
Yes.
Director Ansel.
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer.
Yes.
And Director Reed.
Yes.
Item 3B, resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves PMLD bid number 2018-5-1 substation batteries be awarded to Storage Battery System LLC, Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, in the amount of $9,356. Moved by, any motion? By Councilor Kretzer, seconded by Councilor Dowdle, or Director Dowdle, rather. Any discussion on that point? No discussion being had, we'll move to roll call. Director Armstrong.
Yes.
Director Kelly.
Yes.
Director Dowdle.
Yes.
Director Ansel.
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer?
Yes.
And Director Reed?
Yes.
That action was adopted. Item 3C, resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves MLD to extend contract option for PMLD bid number 2015-7-1 ARC-rated flame-resistant clothing rental program for 2 more years under the same conditions and terms as the original contract to UniFirst Corporation, Keysville, New York, for the amount of $20,000, $996 as well, and 50 cents annually. Any discussion? And Mr. Tracy, could you please explain?
You need a motion before?
Oh, sorry. So moved by Director Kretzer, seconded by Counselor or Director Ensel. And Mr. Tracy, could you please explain exactly what the ARC-rated flame-resistant clothing rental program is?
Yes, 2014, after 20 years, OSHA finally got around to updating the electrical portion of its regulations. In it, it required the employer to provide ARC-rated clothing, which is when you have an electric flash, based on a study that you had to do for worst-case situations. You had to provide the clothing to your personnel that could be exposed. In addition to that, they required, the employer was responsible to ensure that the clothing was properly washed and it was properly mended. Now, I'm not planning to go home and watch what the wives are gonna do, they're gonna do the wash. So we contracted with UniFirst for the clothing, and they do the washing weekly, and they bring them back on hangers, and we do all the mending with buttons come off, or if they get tears, so forth and so on. We've had the program for 3 years now. We want to extend it 2 more.
Well, thank you. Is there any further discussion on this topic? Hearing none, we'll move to roll call. Director Armstrong?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Dowdle?
Yes.
Director Ensel?
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer?
Yes.
And Director Reed?
Yes.
That action is adopted. Item 3D, resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves MLD to write off unpaid final bills from May 2017 in a total amount of $6,946.77. The percentage of write-offs for this period is 0.57%. So moved by Director Kretzer, seconded by Director Dowdle. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to roll call. Director Armstrong?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Dowdle?
Yes.
Director Ensel?
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer?
Yes.
And Director Reed?
Yes.
Item 3E, resolved. In accordance with the request, therefore, the MLD Board approves MLD to write off unpaid bills from June 2017 in the total amount of $6,109.92. The percentage of write-offs for this period is 0.54%. Any motion? Moved by Director Kretzer, seconded by Director Ensel. Any discussion on this topic? Hearing no discussion, we'll move to roll call. Director Armstrong?
Yes.
Director Kelly?
Yes.
Director Dowdle?
Yes.
Director Ensel?
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer?
Yes.
And Director Reed?
Yes.
That action is approved as well. Moving on to item number 4, old business. Hearing no moves for old business, is there, moving on to item number 5, is there any new business?
Just a question on overtime. I know you had once a decade windstorm you had to deal with, and a couple of mutual aid reimbursable incidents.
Mutual aid, when we chatted in New York, I gave that number to or Kelly gave it to Mr. Marks last week. That was a little over $50,000. That was reimbursed to us. The windstorm for May, that ran overtime about $29,000, which is what threw us over there. We had line crews working 17-hour days from Friday night through Sunday night to get everybody back up on power. You know, that's where the bulk of the usage. Those are normal call-outs that we get for motor vehicle accidents. They get a street light, we gotta come out and clean up the street light and secure the wiring. We put a new one back up the next day. But all those charges get charged to the insurance company, and we do get reimbursed on those. Also, this year, we also had to support the movie company, and they paid for our overtime. they get the number of hours they get to support them. There's a couple of days they required a line truck for nearly 12-hour period, 2-man crew. So they reimbursed us for all that we were paid for.
These figures don't represent the funds that have been reimbursed or are reimbursable, correct?
I haven't seen those numbers. Is that's this week's thing?
Right, it's overtime. It shows year-to-date overtime of 100,967.
Probably not, no.
Just below it, you see the recoveries piece?
Yes,
Just right
yes.
there.
Okay, I see the 12,7.
12,739.23 is the number Bill gave you for the recovery for the overtime.
Okay,
That was on the mutual aid.
right.
Are you,
Was it? Oh, go ahead.
So, but Richard, I'm sorry, but that 12,000 of recovery is not taken off
the 29?
the 29, or the 26,000 variance, correct?
Well, you can match it against it, yes.
No, but I'm saying the 26,000 does not include the 12,000 that's been recovered.
That's correct.
Okay.
If you see the net number to the right, 88,000
Right.
would be the net overtime number.
Mm-hmm.
So that would change the 26,000 number above.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Bill and Kelly, you have a copy of that in your box downstairs.
And
So
are
it's
we,
about 13,000 over in the variance.
Yeah, it's probably a little less than that, it's true, because we didn't count in the movie reimbursements and the motor vehicle accidents, so it would probably take it down below 10.
Okay. Okay, no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure
True.
where those figures,
and is the overtime still going on?
Oh, anytime I get a call out,
Okay. 'Cause, I mean, this-
I have to respond.
Okay, because I had a constituent who called, it was Saturday, he had been scheduled to have, he had a large tree hit his house during the windstorm, but that's cleaned up. But there were thoughts to take more trees out of the power
We
line.
dropped those out.
He anticipated the crew on Saturday and was somehow told that overtime's been pulled back, so they
Yeah,
didn't show up.
I'm concerned back on overtime. We were to try to get, what happened is after the windstorm,
Right.
we've gotten inundated by trees. People who suddenly didn't want us to take trees down, now want us to take trees down after what happened that weekend. So we're backlogged.
Okay.
I was using that up to that point to try to clear out that backlog.
Okay.
Is there a criteria for what trees you will take down?
Yeah, and trees that are city trees that are in the city right away, we take down. Private trees, we do not take down. Trees that are in a right of way that are a threat to our lines, we take those down.
Do you take the whole tree down or you just trim them so they're not?
Depends on the
a threat?
situation. Some cases, the homeowner has gotten another company in, but they're not allowed to play around lines. We'll take it down below our lines, and then the other company will take it the rest of the way.
If they're blue spruce, they take them all down. I've got the backyard to prove it.
I mean,
But
when you
anyway.
when you cut the crown off the tree, the tree's gonna die eventually.
While we're on the subject of trees, I know you kind of tie in with DPW. I had a constituent also contact me, he has 3 trees that are just a few feet in from the curb. He's told they're not city trees. Would they be, how do you determine what's a city tree and what's not a city? Pardon?
You gotta have a boundary survey done to show where the city right of way is, to determine whether those trees are within the city right of way.
He also asked if they're city trees or his trees, can he cut them down? Or would he be in harm's way if he took a city tree down?
So the way the law is you can trim a tree if it is encroaching on your property, as long as you don't do harm to the physical tree if you don't own it. So basically, if the tree is encroaching over the property line, he can trim the tree up the property line as long as it doesn't actually kill the tree, because then the city or the neighbor could go after him for damages to the tree.
Right, so ownership is determined how is kind of his question.
So basically, you have to have a boundary survey done to show where his front property line is and shoot the tree in to see if the tree sits on his property or is located within the city right away.
Okay.
Yeah, basically the trunk at breast height.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what's that last thing you said?
The trunk at breast height, so basically if you're standing at the tree,
Right.
chest level, that's usually where you locate the tree. Because you get trees that angle this way and that way.
Okay.
Is there any other new business to discuss?
Just have one question, and that is on the revenue page of the finance report we were given. The cryptocurrency activity is captured in large commercial sales.
Industrial sales.
Industrial sales.
We have one that's classified as large commercial, one account, and the
The big-
major user is an industrial.
And are we continuing to collect additional revenue because of that activity?
Yes, but the excess revenue is being withheld and put into a special, the HDLS reserve is
Yeah.
now at 141,000. We have an additional deposit in June, so that's at 141. It's restricted per the Public Service Commission's directive.
And that's to offset any potential cost of having to purchase additional
No,
power?
no, sir. That's, they feel, we're making too much money because of it, and I have to put it into that account. And a year from now, a decision will be made on how that money will be spent.
Okay.
It may be sent to Albany, they may allow me to do, infrastructure work around town. They may allow me to buy a truck, it will be up to them. I will have to go through my utility attorneys, petition the council as to how that money can be spent.
Okay. Now, I know that we had some discussion about the Bitcoin, that there would be, in the event that we had to purchase additional power during the
Yes,
winter months,
If
that it
they-
wouldn't be passed on to the, to the,
Correct.
Home.
In case of the large ones. The small mom and pop ones that have 10 or 15 machines, they don't register. But it's the big ones, they would then fall subject to rider A, which then would ensure that the cost of the additional purchase power, they will pay for the entire cost for themselves. Versus where the cost would be shared out
Shared out.
among all the customers.
so approximately how many of the Bitcoin
We have-
large,
Right now, we have two. We have a third one supposedly getting started in Imperial, but he had told me he was gonna start it at the end of May, and I think he's holding off because the value of the Bitcoin is dropping considerably. I think today's about 6,000 barely.
so then essentially, if we have to purchase more power, say during the winter months, or with the upcoming heat wave
He's
coming
been
in,
notified,
both of them would have to pay the cost of the additional
Yeah,
power that we had to
One guy's
buy.
got two different locations, and then there's a new guy. All of them have been notified that they fall under this rider A. They're not happy about it, but
Approximately how much are we talking? I mean, last year, how much did we
well,
pay
if
over?
we went with the winter, and we went with January, where we had to buy, our peak demand was almost 123 megawatts. And we had to buy a lot of supplemental lot, because that first 2 weeks of January was very cold.
What was the cost associated with that additional purchase?
Huh?
What was the cost associated with that additional power
Well,
purchase?
Because our agency, NIMPA, buys the power a year to 2 years in advance, plus they hedge it, it's a lot lower than it would have been if we bought off the spot market. The spot market during that time frame was going between $450 and $650 per megawatt hour, depending where you were in the state. We were billed $36 a megawatt hour.
And how many additional we were 100 and,
Yeah, that's the peak, but then you have to, we bought, I don't have the number from my hand, but we had to buy also a lot of kilowatt hours. Because one's the energy and then the other is the demand. And we used the millions in kilowatt hours more than we normally did.
if you were to give it just an overall estimate of
Off the top
what,
of my head, the PPAC charge for that month was 1.6 cents times your number of kilowatt hours the next month that you used. And that was straight across the board for everybody. If right rate had existed at that time, it would have dropped to about 1.1 cent for everybody else. And the cryptocurrency would have had to pay almost a nickel per kilowatt hour the next month.
What are we talking as far as totality in numbers, not just per kilowatt hour?
What do you mean?
What I'm saying is,
According to
what would the Bitcoin companies have to pay if that was in place in January between the two
According to
companies?
the Public Service Commission, when they did their release on this, they said it would have increased the crypto coins, currencies cost by 60%.
Okay.
I can't give you the exact number.
Okay, that's what I was looking for, but that's fine.
And it was not calculated out as such.
Okay,
But they calculated, and they said 60% was the number.
okay, thank you.
To give you an idea of scale, I think one large user can use upwards of $250,000 a month, close to $3 million a year, because they're a 24/7 kind of operation, which I believe, do we earn sales tax on that, and is the rate 8% sales tax, of which
8%,
about 1 percentage point or 0.5% comes to the city. So Joe and I were talking, this may be one of the largest reasons why sales tax revenue in the county went up last year. So
And as the mayor said, most power usage goes up and down like a sine wave, but they're flatlined right across. They stay full power, full time, 365 days of the year.
Because there was some previous discussion to see if they would agree to turning things down a little during high peak demand hours.
They would have to shut down entirely in the winter time in order to avoid right rate. So they would have to shut down from the 1st of December to the end of March.
Okay.
If they use any power in that time frame, they would fall under right rate.
Okay.
Even if they use power only in the warm days, which we didn't use the quota, since they're all equally responsible, they'd be paying for the overages of the other Bitcoin operators that didn't shut down on those days. So in that rationale, you might as well just keep your operation on anyway, or completely shut down, just like you said.
Yeah, because there's no way to identify anything other way of doing it.
Okay.
Any other new business? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 6, persons addressing the board. This is now the options for any members of the public who'd like to address the MLB board. Seeing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Director Dowdle, seconded by Director Kretzer. Roll call. Director Armstrong.
Yes.
Director Kelly.
Yes.
Director Dowdle.
Yes.
Director Ensel.
Yes.
Director McFarland votes yes. Director Kretzer.
Yes.
And Director Reed.
Yes?
Meeting is adjourned at 5:26 p.m.
This is the opportunity for us to have any extended discussion on agenda items during this work session. There is a need to have a very brief executive session to discuss the acquisition of land. If I have somebody want to move, Councilor
Yeah, I would
Ansel.
like to add a motion to enter into executive session to discuss financial credit or employment history of a particular person. I'll ask that.
So is that acceptable, Councilor Ansel? You can have a motion for both of these? Okay. And second by Councilor Armstrong. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry. Just go around.
for the tree. He just wasn't sure. No, he just said he I've been more We've already told him he can't take that tree to her. Tree's on the other side of the sidewalk.
Yeah, we get in a situation, you're saying the right of way. And also,
Well, Sheriff's is on the other side of the sidewalk.
You know what I used to do, like, probably was like an engineering firm, had a bunch of maps. And when they had tree improvements and stuff, they had, I don't even know where those are.
Well, he's been for a number of years.
Sure.
Yeah, he keeps trying and trying. He feels the sinkholes. Yes, he works with this whole thing. He knows the roads.
Yeah, so does it, is he getting with the city retirement?
Not in his opinion.
No.
He was one of the first ones to see insurance.
Oh.
Try to switch it. Straight after about 5 years now, I've been told. They're gonna try to get that Monday.
Well, I told the engineer guy that, you can take that to us. So he's pitching this against See that?
Which one is that one?
Just an hour though, it was like.
Just take a while now. Just take, you guys the time looking at it.
These trees, I guess,
See that better cranes and stuff, maybe.
it's like the one
Yeah,
out there in the old.
Yeah, those are good trees.
Well, we contracted that out.
Yeah.
But then you got those two up there in the corner of, Dennis and, was it Kogan?
Yes, I think that's the
Those are definitely, they're like in the middle of the yard.
I know that's. Question property lines.
Pretty helpful if there were sidewalks up
You know, we usually not measure the sidewalk.
there. Yes. Although the right of way is not always right in the dead center of the roadway is not always right in the middle.
That's why you see the map. And engineering that.
Most times.
Engineering did have that.
Yeah, you start taking out private trees, then you're gonna have all the trees, private tree companies in here screaming.
Yeah.
But like the one time they told me about taking over all the city trash, all the independents showed up complaining. They think of their life.
Trees are a problem. You never realize it until it's a problem.
Well, trees are also a major headache. I've seen it in California, I've seen it in Europe. It's bad.
See a guy in Sandra had a couple of trees right adjacent to his driveway. The owner was, his neighbor was a former counselor, Walker. Gary. Gary was being driven to high school trees and they sap on his car. And so have something to tell them.
She still likes it, she's not.
So the guy called me up there, private tree, simple matter. And he ended up skinning that whole side of the tree, go by there sometime. It's in this intersection, there's a second house in, from Ruger Street. Yeah, exactly, skin that whole side. My biggest response, email.
Sorry?
Email response.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's gonna be temporary out here.
I mean, I would feel better. She did agree.
Especially because they work through it.
I mean, I'd like to have Jody do that too, but the last time that she's moving to New York City, we're very quickly.
She already checked. I see it.
Really what's supposed to notify us.
They didn't cancel that meeting.
She really wants supposed to.
I guess so.
Leave this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was.
Everything you wanted to know, but we're afraid to ask.
Exactly.
And people that they just don't. I think it's only where the planning board meeting is once a month, 2 hours. But there's so much that goes into it. If you don't do it, like, if you don't cross the Ts, you're gonna cancel the meeting. We got people that have projects in the queue, waiting, and it's just a lot of work.
Hey, we're for sale. Relax.
Yeah. Beth looks like she wants to know. President, step up.
There's something to do on Tuesday night, the whole chain.
This Monday.
Well, Monday they seem better.
Yeah, you already know what it is. So just tell the mayor you're taking 4 weeks back.
I've heard of nothing.
No, it's not 6.
You guys should buy it. Well, that's the thing, I don't know if the park's long.
It's a very brave friend.
What's that?
We're very brave.
Yeah.
It was bought like merged with Raycon. But now
How come you were at the end of this time?
Because they want stuff on the agenda tonight. So that's right. Had review days out at 5.
That was a pretty quick meeting for you guys.
Well, I just went to this extension, I had a couple of bids I had to get through.
I don't know, I think one of these.
Change my price, prices out there, there's a check there.
No, that's straight from these newspapers, milk until they're gone.
We'll change this in there for us.
We still have money, believe it or not. So, we figure, well, kind of short stuff.
I mean, the hotel's gonna be on. Well, yes, me.
Three.
Because they're gonna lease that. Multi-multi. So, it's state.
That's it. No, it's
Everything's submitted.
Is it warm? That's unfortunately, that's a short. But, yes. Jack will take a picture for us. That's all right. I mean, that's how it seemed in the county. Sort of like Plattsburgh border surface.
Yeah, the significance is whether
I just gotta get it right. Well, no, I have to go underground too. Last time I did that, they were certified on the DH tracks. Maybe others. So, I would go on with it. Well, Arizona,
what kind of problem is it to get right away from here?
Overall, it's actually, it's probably the split because part of it is in the town and part of it is in Arizona. Because of that. Once we get that, it's, the building's right on the other side.
Okay.
So that's what you
It's gonna be hard to get her up, because it's a
You guys got the water out? They'll just said you were going to negotiating with DA, right?
Here you go. Oh, you give?
No, it's not a question. What they want.
Yeah.
Free water and electric for.
Again, legally too. I don't know. Electric.
I've never seen it. Yeah.
Did they in there?
Was there some discussion that they could potentially get them and take it from the town as a charge? That's still an option. But then you wouldn't need George. It's still in gold going product. So either way, whether we extend the line or it's paid from the town, either way.
My favorite song.
When do they want to send the Boston?
In August. They said they built a new function in August. Yeah, well, they only told us last week about power.
Yeah.
They went through the zoning thing, it was the first of May. Yeah, well, they don't have any details for that yet.
See, that will be subject to zoning.
Well, the question is, why are you wasting time for something that you should tell them you have no idea how it's going to
No, you're talking about another, but they're proposing that too. Building parking. Before the big time.
Oh, that's what I was like, because I interviewed them like a couple months ago about just like media diversity. So I guess that's why I was like, this doesn't seem to be
Turning the flag or just long term? It doesn't matter, everything launched. I mean, you all have to start on the same place.
Same time. Same time. Yeah, because you do have some actually have some guys who have like restaurants and they launch from there. You get little costs.
So you could launch from a number of things. You can't go out, you know.
They have a starting line. You know.
So I was out walking. I think it was Saturday morning. On sale, I had to walk around Front Avenue about 6 o'clock in the morning. And the boats were back up to the turn at GP. They weren't moving very fast. They were preaching.
It doesn't take long.
Just one launch, you know, that takes a long time. Yeah.
I just heard about that. It's a Western New York elevator.
Oh, that's that Greg?
Yeah. He said he was waiting, sometimes like we're waiting to hear what he did on Friday, because he only let a certain amount of votes go on Saturday. So he had a place in the front of the first 20 years.
There was a Plattsburgh guy who I looked at the end of Thursday's week, he was headed. He was there.
He ended up being in.
No.
No, I think he was second.
It's like in Boston, like, at 2 a.m. here.
Well, it's on the agenda for me.
They were all reading.
It's great to be wrapped up. So what's compared to there?
I don't know if it's me.
So Lorelai's closest. That would make sense. So you can call it the draft Plattsburgh because that was never.
Well, I went to.
I seriously. I haven't watched it in a few years. The day I got sick.
They plan on
I
it.
just go home early that night so I could watch the Gilmore Girls. That's what always happens. I was like, are we done here?
Then, I don't know, while it's turning around, I was so loud, you can't hear.
It's gonna be warmer this weekend.
I don't like to play outside.
You know what? Installing air conditioners in my house is one of the things it's just such a pain. I own 20 houses, moving furniture, dropping them off from outside. I don't remember which one.
She just wants her comfort. She was looking at me like you're nuts.
Yeah. So.
But she likes her comfort.
Sure. Explain it, just like, she's gonna say that, you get used to it. Yeah. On the first day of. So Rory is 6 to 10. They have another copy. She's very close to her. So it's like her sister, she's all just about the way that they are. It's a sensitive little town. So like characters. My favorite characters. It's so like that. I don't know, like everyone knows that I really home here in front of right? And she's all better there. It's like now so she never starts to she's a chef like a general store in the street on the office. If you don't find the box then it's like that. It's just different. And it's it has all the obscure references.
Think about.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't that the year before I came on, they did two fireworks out there. I was ready.
Then you couldn't get out, I think, forever. They have safe weeks all over. That's why I looked at this. It was like arenas up and then by the time we walk back, we'll start
I've seen it.
as fast as I can. So just like better. The sugar is not yeah.
We would go to Montreal.
It's a fine line, but for the most part, I mean, there's always stuff I'm sure that I've never seen before. There's mistake in it, consultants and developers. Right on that cusp.
Still a cub reporter.
Returning From executive session, matter of acquisition of real property and issue of an individual person, no decisions were taken. Let's begin the meeting of the Common Council with Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed?
Present.
Counselor Armstrong?
Here.
Counselor Kelly?
Here.
Counselor Dowdle?
Here.
Counselor Enzel?
Here.
Counselor McFarland?
Here.
Counselor Kretzer?
Here.
Just one brief comment. It's going to be a very warm weekend this weekend. Temperatures approaching 100 degrees. Of course, we want all our city residents to know, and the town residents too, that they have access to the beach at zero cost as part of the residency. So please avail themselves and don't take any unnecessary risks. The police or the fire station is also prepared to help with any emergency workers that may be suffering from overheating. But just be very aware and cautious this weekend. Thank you.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on June 21st, 2018 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer, second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of the various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending June 27th, 2018 in the amount of $134,136.10 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. There's a number of reports in your packet. Let's begin with individual committee reports, governance strategy, and city operations. Councilor Kretzer.
I don't have any updates currently. Councilor Armstrong, do you have any updates?
City infrastructure, Councilor Wenzel.
No updates at this point. We will be meeting in 2 weeks, I believe, once again, and hopefully at that time we'll definitely have zeroed in on the repaving schedule.
Finance and budget, Councilor Kelly.
We held our meeting last week, and I'd also like to point out that Mr. Marks issued his May expense versus revenue report earlier this week. And also something of interest to the council is what happened with the department reorganization last year and what kind of savings did we actually receive. He reported on both of those things, and I hope all of you had a chance to read those. Very enlightening. Another thing we're concerned about is health care, and it seems as though for some reason good reasons, our health expenses are going down considerably this year over previous years, and it may have something to do with our new healthcare consulting company, and it may just have something to do also with fewer staff and also less experience with the use of healthcare. So that's all good news. And seems like we're trending in a good direction.
And we're hopeful, as you saw from last week, the various difficult decisions you made last year are tracking as expected, maybe a little bit better than expected, because we've heard a report from the county that assessment costs may even be a little bit lower than initially conservatively estimated. If we can track lower in some of our budget expenditures compared to budget, as Chamberlain Marks is reporting, and based on the really hard work from the departments, and we can have some economies in healthcare expenses, that's going to go at least a little bit away, hopefully a long way, to meeting a very ambitious target for expenditure reductions this year of $650,000. So we're beginning the discussion division by division on their individual budgets. You saw some analysis and reporting from public safety earlier. You'll see more reporting from infrastructure and from governance and administration units in the next couple of weeks, culminating hopefully in a further discussion towards an actual 2019 budget, beginning with your finance and budget meeting upcoming. So we're making progress, hoping to have a budget out in the same sort of time frame of July or August of this year, and allow you all to take that budget and work with it for yourselves.
Thank you, Mayor.
And by the way, we're doing it a little bit differently again. First of all, we want more active input from the council, but we're also seeking much more active input from the various departments. We're doing it on a division by division basis. And then we're all going to come together and, as all our departments, and work out a final budget with you and asking for much more input from them. Great. Thank you. Public safety, Councilor Dowdle.
Oh, we met this evening. Of course, the hot topic is the overtime costs. Where we're at, how we got there. We got a pretty good explanation, I believe, and a few other things about staffing concerns that kind of relate to overtime. Everything seems to head towards that overtime budget, but we had a good discussion, and there's a few items on tonight's agenda also looking for approval. Thank you.
Plattsburgh Public Library, Councilor Armstrong.
Yes, the library is now installing the mechanized parts, the moving parts of the mural that was installed last week, and solar panels have been placed on the roof in order to energize that moving part business. Welcomed the new appointee to the board that was appointed last week. And the Clinton Essex Franklin Library director is probably going to be appointed within the next week or so.
And Rochelle, when is that the mural set to be finished with all the moving parts?
I don't know if I can say.
Okay.
There was no, I don't think that schedule was discussed that I recall.
Okay.
It's moving along.
Meanwhile, Outdoor Arts is already starting in another mural just down the street on the side of the former Merkel's department store, the Ashley Furniture Building.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. MLD, Councilor McFarland.
Oh, yes, we just actually had our meeting in contrast to how it's been done before. We had our meeting before our council meeting this week, and we'll see some of the items that we talked about there on the agenda tonight.
Resolve the reports as listed are hereby ordered. Received any written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Ensel, second by Councilor Armstrong. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. No correspondence or recommendations for boards at this time.
Resolved that the bills logged by the Common Council for the week ending June 29th, 2018 in the amount of $1,917,858.37 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Kelly and second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. I prepared to get a chance to get the agenda. If any members of the public would like to address the council on any agenda items, please do so at this time. There'll be another public comment period at the end of the meeting for any various items of mutual interest. Seeing no movement?
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves SUNY Police to divert and direct one-way traffic in a westerly direction as in past school years on Ruger Street between the Myers Building roadway.
Make a
Ruger
motion.
Street.
I make a motion to waive the readings of 7A, B, C, D, and moving forward.
Moved by Councilor Ensel, second by Councilor Kretzer. Discussion on waiving the reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any discussion on items themselves?
You said through D, right?
Did I say through D?
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry, I meant through G.
G,
Oh,
please.
Through F?
gee, whoa.
Yeah, did we say if
So F.
After.
F, yeah.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Sorry.
Authorizing resolutions, call a public hearing to satisfy the public participation requirement for the Community Development Block Grant Program. Whereas this resolution has been submitted by the Community Development Office, and whereas the City of Plattsburgh's plans to submit a consolidated funding to New York State HCR's Community Development Block Grant, Public Infrastructure Grant, mitigation of the City of Plattsburgh's water resource and recovery facility, as well as CDBG Main Street Anchor Grant facility upgrades to the train station. And whereas a public hearing consistent with the federal requirements found in 24 CFR 570.486 is required prior to the submittal of the grant applications under the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, administered by New York State HCR, to seek direction and comments on the application. And whereas the city will hold a public meeting on July 12, 2018 at 5 p.m. to discuss the applications and take public comment. And whereas the Community Development Office will take public comment on the applications until July 13, 2018. And resolved, the Community Development Office of the City of Plattsburgh shall cause any notice of hearing to be posted on the bulletin board in City Hall and published in official publications, and the Community Development Office shall also provide copies of the hearing notice to all City of Plattsburgh council members.
Moved by Councilor Kretzer, second by Councilor Armstrong. Discussion.
Yes, I was listening very intently when Beth was reading that, but can you just explain a little more about what this is for?
Sure, it's a requirement for the CFA applications that the city is submitting for both the mitigation of the wastewater treatment plant and for facade and window improvements to the train station on Dock Street.
Consolidated funding.
Consolidated funding application.
Yes, to the city.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves that the mayor be authorized to sign a lease agreement with Signature Productions to hold an event known as 2018 Spa Blowout in the Crate Civic Center Arena from Thursday, June 28, 2018 through Monday, July 2nd, 2018. The lease requires Signature Productions to pay the City of Plattsburgh rent in the amount of $4,670. Further, the council finds that this space is not needed for a public purpose during the proposed lease agreement term of 5 days, and that this lease will be subject to presentation of sufficient proof of insurance.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion.
I guess, what is the spa blowout, and will it require any city resources such as police or overtime or?
In this case, minimal resources. You know, one of the biggest turnover costs is swapping out the floor. In this case, the floor is already installed. We won't be incurring that cost. I think the rate you're charging is more competitive and higher than we've charged in similar times in the past as well.
And to answer your first question, it's a hot tub exposition.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And this resolution also finds that we've found that the space is not needed for any other public purposes. Is that indeed the case?
That is indeed the case.
Perfect.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore the Common Council approves 3 fire department employees to attend the 4-week first line supervisors training program from July 30th to August 24th, 2018 in Fort Totten, New York. The total cost should not exceed $1,000.
Moved by Councilor Ensel, second by Councilor Dowdle. Discussion. We discussed it significantly early on in the committee meeting. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Are there any items for initial consideration?
I have one.
Councilor Ensel.
I'd like to introduce this resolution. Resolved in accordance with the request, therefore, the Common Council of the City of Plattsburgh approves the mayor to sign the just compensation agreement with R.K. Height and Company Incorporated for the land acquisition of the real property identified as tax map parcel 221.7-03-09.
Let's make a motion to implement Rule 4.
Second?
Second by Councilor Armstrong. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion on the item itself. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Kretzer?
Yes.
Any other items for initial consideration? New business and additional council reports. Council Renfro?
Yes, actually, once again, I got a text prior to the meeting starting tonight that games on both South Acres and Bailey Avenue had to be canceled again tonight, and there was no work done on the fields at all today. I don't know.
I was reminded that of the policy that we instituted as a council in 2016 that obligated the teams to do their own pre-game.
To mark their field, but not to remove the water and puddles. And
I believe that was part of the agreement as well.
was it?
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that predated me. So.
Yeah, well, you would, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Okay. I think some of them, some of the teams are under the assumption that it was to do their own lining and field
Yeah.
lining and so on, but it wasn't for the
I'm sure there's
the
a
care,
copy of the
care and the
policy.
welfare of the.
Yeah, I'm
of
sure there's a
the,
copy of the policy.
fields.
I believe it was Superintendent Peters who introduced this as a money-saving measure in 2016, and the council approved
I
it.
think there were even members of the teams in the league that were there at the time that
Yes.
said, we'll take care of it.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'll play the role of messenger then.
Well,
Well-
and/or wait until you get the document, and then you can give them the document.
Yep.
Can that be produced?
Yeah, absolutely possible.
Thank you.
Speaking of Bailey Park, there's been some continual tension. You saw Mr. Downs speak to us last week. May I propose that we move to some sort of a permitting system that will allow for vehicles to be authorized to use that facility? Make it very easy and liberal for them to receive that authorization, maybe make up a couple magnetic signs that can be put on their vehicles so that people can clearly see that they have permission to use that facility, but it has continued to be a problem. And I'm open to any ideas.
Yeah, I guess I wonder if we go to that permit system, if those who don't have the permit see cars parked there, and then all of a sudden it becomes actually a bigger issue of cars being there and passing through. And some of the complaints that I've heard too, doesn't have to deal with just the parking and the cars being there, but also cars going by as people were walking their grandchildren and so on, and passing by them, and basically the safety and danger aspect of it too. So that was one of the concerns also expressed. Not
There is
just
a sign,
parking.
Chief pointed out that there's a sign.
Sign
no
there. I walked by the other day,
unauthorized
and no authorized vehicles.
But there are some under the impression that they are authorized to be there, is that correct?
vehicles. Certainly any city-owned
Yeah,
vehicle
city.
under business would be considered an authorized
Right.
vehicle.
But not participants of, say, the garden.
Has it gotten worse since last week? Because when he was
There's
here,
been incidents.
really?
Since last week.
Because I remember he asked for like some time to work it out in house, and I was curious if that.
Any other ideas of how the council may want to pursue this as a policy issue that may come up in other areas as well? There are other no use of unauthorized vehicle signs elsewhere in the city as well.
I guess for Mr. Brody, I know there are multiple ways to access the field in that area of the park, from off of Bailey Avenue, as well as over by Ashley Furniture, that area, and also through the parking lot. But I'm wondering if, I know that your crews go in and take care of the park maintenance and so on. Is there a way of possibly putting up a gate or something to stretch across there that would deter vehicles?
I'll have to look at that. Well, years ago, there was an idea that they could have a driveway through and a parking area there from the Bailey Avenue side if they wanted to pay for it. We could have like two-car parking area and then a drive, so you wouldn't affect the walking path. There was discussion about that, so maybe.
But the cars would still be driving over the walking path.
Well, if you come from the other.
Oh, from the Bailey Avenue, I see, okay, I see. Just to put a little parking pad right there by the entrance. I see.
Yes, there was discussion about that.
Okay.
Never went anywhere. I'll look at the other gate.
Thank you.
I have a question. There was no planning board meeting last Monday. The last one was May 28th. What's going to become of the planning board since the secretary has quit? We no longer have a engineering aide. And I didn't see the minutes online from the 28th, and there were several items. So I don't know if anybody attended on the 28th. Having been on the planning board for 9 years, oftentimes it would get postponed to the next month. So it's often a 2-month process. So now it looks like it's going to be a possibly 3-month process. Is there a planning board next month?
There is. It was July 11th, if I recall. It's been rescheduled. By the way, to update that, Mr. Miller is in the process of hiring a replacement for the senior clerk to normally take care of those logistics.
Okay.
We can't explain why that didn't happen. We did have a senior clerk fully employed almost right up to the date of that planning board meeting.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, she's under employment, I think, even beyond that planning board meeting. So, but we've taken actions for that. We're also looking at, so he's identified a couple of strong candidates for that and be making his decision very soon. And we're also looking at a highly qualified individual for a position of planner to also assist in that. As you know, conceptually you've approved a senior planner or planner last summer. So we believe we found an individual for that. We should be able to report back to you maybe as early as next Thursday.
So it won't be a senior planner, it'll just be a planner?
Probably be a planner with the ability to promote that person to senior planner depending on their success. And at the same time, we're still also looking to figure out how to best position either an engineering aide or a draftsperson to work not only with some of the additional work that DPW is taking upon themselves out of their desire to do more in-house than we used to do, but also to assist Mr. Miller in some of the engineering functions that are part of the planning, specking and all that kind of stuff with regard to DRI, et cetera.
So just an engineering aide, not an engineer, though? Or will that be part of the qualification?
Well, our engineering aide, if you recall, was an engineer.
That's true, but I'm saying
That'd be the preference.
Okay.
Because I see with
sir?
I'm curious why Mr. Miller is he doing recruiting for staffing? You said Mr. Miller was overseeing.
The senior planner position is, according to civil service, in his department.
In his department. Oh, okay, I see.
But the planning board clerk, the senior clerk,
is actually in his department as well.
so what other duties, is that just for the planning board?
No, it also gives support for his office. That's not his only clerical administrative secretarial support is that clerk, senior clerk. If I recall, I think you're moving to a senior accounting clerk, a slightly higher rated.
Senior account clerk, yes.
And I noticed the town recently went to a planning and development model. Is that something we're looking at, or?
I think the model that the town works with is excellent. When we did the reorganization last summer, it was to have a more encompassing planning function than simply narrowly engineering, if you recall. And as a matter of fact, I made a recent request to Supervisor Cashman to see if we could work together as a shared service in adopting their approach to this. And I've also spoken with one of their ex-employees, retired employees, to see if he'd be willing to help us set up the office to function in a very similar way, because they do have a very highly functioning office, as you know.
Busy office.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, we would duplicate that, or the thought is we could combine forces?
We'd try to do as much using, instead of reinventing the wheel, using their model as possible. Although I'd be also willing to explore any ability to share services as well, you know.
Okay.
Me and shared services.
And that inquiry's been made?
Mhm.
Any response?
Not so productive response, yeah. I'm always hopeful.
But a response?
Response.
Okay. Can we participate with the town because of the litigation?
I don't see any reason why not.
Is there an intermunicipality?
Litigation is primarily a commercial litigation. I would hope that that wouldn't be any reason at all for the city and the town and city and the county, et cetera, to continue to work together as many ways as fruitfully possible, you know. And in the corporate world, many times you may have a commercial dispute, but it doesn't stop you at all from collaborating in other ways. And, you know, that's what mature organizations do.
And also along that, the aviation campus out at the airport, the city some time ago made a land exchange. Now the county owns a piece of property in the city. Do I have that right?
There's 2 lots in the corner of the county airport that are actually in city jurisdiction.
And one's possibly hotel and the other's for the transportation.
Correct.
Who's gonna give the water to that?
The city ultimately will. The city has responsibility for servicing those sites. We've worked out an arrangement to get the water to that location.
At a cost of what? Do we know what the cost will be?
The most recent calculation, we found that there's a 14-inch line running to within about 450 feet of where we need to get to. We're estimating about $100 a foot, so about $45,000. We expect the annual revenue, water revenue from hotel to total close to about 18,000, so the payback period should be about 2 or 3 years. We also plan to bring MLD power to it, and by doing so, we'll generate, based on average hotel usage, I'm basing that calculation on about a 100-room hotel, average revenue of somewhere around $300,000. And by the way, by the developer using city water, sewer, and electricity, we expect them to also save about $300,000 a year as well. I calculate over the 75-year lifetime of the hotel, based on a 3% discount rate, the present value to both the city and to the developer, and savings for the developer is somewhere around $10 million. So this is very valuable, not only to city taxpayers, but also to the developer themselves by availing themselves of servicing through the city.
Do we just ask them to keep their thermostats turned down a little? Can we just have them turn their thermostats down a little? Okay. All right.
Any further council reports? Seeing none, this is another opportunity for the council, or for the council to hear from the public and any issues of concern. Please state your name, your address, and there's a 5-minute time limit. Thank you.
My name is Jamie Schwartz. I'm the Vice President for the Plattsburgh Professional Firefighters. I'm here to talk about our staffing issues that we talked about a little bit earlier. Day in and day out, the firefighters of the Plattsburgh Fire Department put their gear on the truck and prepare to respond to any emergency in the city of Plattsburgh or the surrounding areas. Whether that be responding to fires, car accidents, hazardous materials incidents, swiftwater rescue incidents, rope rescues, or ambulance calls, we stand ready to respond rapidly and as effectively as possible. One major factor that can make or break an emergency scene is enough personnel to do the job. At current, we are 4 firefighters below our minimum manning clause. This clause was decided on years ago and agreed upon by the firefighters and the city council as the lowest possible number the department can drop to provide effective response. At that time, we had well over 36 firefighters that the contract calls for. Over time and through attrition, we have been slowly whittled away to the 36 we had up until June of 2017. Since then, we have been at 35, and as of May of this year, we are now at 32. Since then, our call volume has increased as well. We have been recently informed by Chief Lawless that we have permission to hire 2 firefighters for the July Academy. That would put us at 34. We applaud all the hard work put forth by our chief to get the process going. The Plattsburgh Professional Firefighters feel that this number is still not safe, though. It also does not allow us to comply with the guidelines set forth by NFPA 1710. We are relying heavily on off-duty firefighters and mutual aid to come into our scenes to help mitigate them. This takes time. People have to stop whatever they're doing and respond to the emergency. We are very lucky to have a group of very dedicated volunteers from surrounding areas, as well in our mutual aid system, as well as a good group of our own firefighters that understand that when the pager goes off, their brother firefighters need help. With summer coming and vacations, kids' events planned, we are afraid that that response might drop. We applaud every one of you for making difficult decisions in these tough economic times. We ask you to please help us to continue to provide the best service possible to our citizens. Please bring us back to our minimum of 36. We look forward to working with you to try to get this accomplished. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the public, please?
Shortly after we had the moratorium on the cryptocurrency, I got up and gave a little speech of my concerns, but I haven't heard anything about what you guys have been doing. There's been a couple seminars at the college that I went to, but I know you were talking about getting together some people, professionals, some on each side or whatever, and I was just wondering if you guys have had any of those meetings or who's involved in that, and what the public's gonna get to find out about that before you vote to do something, whatever that may be, or where you're headed with that. That's pretty much what I'd like to know.
Certainly the public will. At this point, we've crafted some ideas for code, and our legal counsel and I have been working together on this. We would then farm that out to experts. We're in the process of that, experts at the state level, to ensure that what we're trying to do not only makes sense but is legal. We also understand a number of communities in New York and around the world are looking at our solutions to this too, so we really want to get it right and be well thought through. I expect that that should be ready for the council to at least take an initial look at, perhaps in another month or so. Does that address your question?
And I can say we have had a couple meetings with some technical advisors, as well as the fire chief and other public officials that are responsible for safety as well, to start these discussions towards implementing code changes.
I'd like to request a summary of where you know, a more substantive, detailed summary of what you're learning and what you think your plan will be, just preliminarily, if that would be possible.
Any other individuals like to come and address the council, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Marisha Harmon. I reside on Adirondack Lane in the city of Plattsburgh. I'm here again this week because I have some questions pertaining to last week. So it was my understanding last week that we were going to honor the commitment that I was provided by Ms. Geddes, despite the fact that perhaps maybe she shouldn't have been the person to provide it. However, instead of that, I was provided a new contract that is much different than the one she provided me. And I have some questions about the monetary aspect of it. So previously we had discussed that my contract was $800 to occupy my space at the Plattsburgh City Beach, but I'm out an entire month of operating, and the new contract does not reflect that. The new contract is asking for $750, which would not compensate, like mathematically, that doesn't make sense to me. So I was wondering where that figure comes from.
So just as a point of order, you know, these questions are things that would go through the Community Development Office. The Community Development Office oversees recreation, if I'm not mistaken, and as well as the property at the City Beach. So have you spoken to anyone in the Community Development Office regarding the concerns with the contract?
Yeah, I was here last week in front of the city
No,
council.
after you received the contract with the new.
No, I had not had.
And actually, just as a point of order, historically, this is a time when people address the council, and then any of your concerns are typically written down, and then the appropriate person, either departmentally or the council or the mayor, would then get back to you via email or telephone at another time.
So she can proceed with her concerns?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. So if you let us know what the concerns are,
Right.
then we'll make sure the appropriate person contacts you.
Okay, so that would be one of my first concerns. My second concern would be hours of the operation have changed. The use of premises has changed. I was able to sell perishable goods. We discussed last week that I sell ice cream, and then according to the new contract, it says I can't sell ice cream. It says I cannot sell perishables, which would include ice cream, and a majority of my sales, include ice cream, water, Gatorade. People are at the beach. There's now a security deposit that's being asked for that I've not had to provide previously, and so I was looking for some clarity as to that. And then also on the contract, it says that now there's been a change to where now I have to have specific clothing to display that I'm required to wear, and so I have some questions about that as well. So for me, being here last week, I was being told that you're gonna honor that commitment, but according to the new contract, it's completely different. So it doesn't seem as though the previous contract was being honored.
Do you have a copy of the contract that was the
I have both
initial
if you'd like.
contract
Yeah, I have
that
both
was
if
given?
you'd like copies.
That was given to you by Ms. Geddes, as
Yes.
you said? You do have a copy of that?
Mhm.
Perhaps Mr. Miller could take a look at that.
So that's all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further presentations or comments from the public? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Kelly, seconded by Councilor Farland. Roll call.
Counselor Armstrong?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dowdle?
Yes.
Counselor Ensel?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Clemens?
Yes. Michelle? Michelle?
Yeah.
Good. I got a copy of this.
It's up to you.
Oh. Going to the Strawberry Festival? I was just guessing.
Well,